What would you do if the government ordered you to kill your child? I mean, for most of us, that's too horrible of a thing to even think about. How could you ever do that? I mean, it's a terrible thing when a child dies in an accident or from disease or something. But to be ordered by the government to deliberately and intentionally kill your own child. I don't know that any of us can imagine that. But that was the situation in our Bible reading for today. It was a woman who listened to faith rather than to reason who changed the course of history. Our sermon series, Let's Go to the River, returns to the Nile River this week. And you may remember, last week we talked about the Pharaoh of Egypt who had a dream about the Nile River. We talked about Joseph, a Hebrew man. God directed a series of events that led to Joseph being put in charge of all the affairs of Egypt. And that allowed him to save not only his family, but the entire nation of Israel from famine. But now, as you heard in our Bible reading, Joseph is long since gone. And the Egyptians are getting pretty worried about all these Israelites in their country. And as a side note, it kind of goes to show as we read in Ecclesiastes that there's nothing new under the sun. We're talking about immigration as a problem now. They were talking about immigration as a problem back in Old Testament times. As the saying goes, everything old is new again. But the thing is, the king of Egypt takes a pretty drastic step. He declares that all the Hebrew boys should be thrown into the Nile River and drowned. The girls can live, but not the boys. And the thinking behind that was the boys might grow up to be warriors and be a threat, whereas the girls would not be. I don't know how smart that kind of thinking is really, but that was what the thinking was behind it. So think about this. You're a young Israelite living in Egypt. You decide to get married. You want to have children. What if the child is a boy? What are you going to do? Do you throw the child, your own son, into the river? But do you disobey the king? That risks the life of your spouse and your son and your own life as well. What an incredible, horrible choice that would be to have to make. And that is the choice that the mother of Moses had to make in our Bible reading. Her name, by the way, is Jochebed. We don't hear that in this reading, but we're told it elsewhere in the Bible. Her name is Jochebed. Her husband's name is Amram. And the two of them have a son. And he's described as a fine child. So Jochebed decides to defy the government, and she hides the child for 3 months. But of course, you cannot keep a child hidden forever, can you? Children get bigger. Babies grow up. So after 3 months, Jochebed realizes what she is doing is no longer feasible, but she is not about to give up. So she makes a waterproof basket, puts her baby in that basket, takes it to the river, and has her daughter, whose name is Miriam, has Miriam watch to see what's going to happen. As you heard, something did happen. We'll talk about that in a minute, but let's just stop here and think about what Jochebed did. She'd hidden Moses for 3 months. She knew that at any time the government might come along and find him. They might come and take him and kill him. And they might kill her too. It took a lot of courage to defy the government that way. But even more than that, it took a lot of faith. Not just to do that, but to do the rest of what Jochebed did. To take the baby, Moses, put him in this basket, not knowing what's going to happen, but confident that something will happen, and it'll be something good. Because if she did not think that, why else would she have left Miriam there to keep watch? I mean, if Jochebed had thought nobody was going to find Moses, or that the Egyptians would find him and kill him, she would not have left Moses' sister there to watch and see all of this happen. Leaving the daughter Miriam there to watch and see shows that Jochebed had faith that somehow, in some way, something good was going to happen. She wanted to know what it was going to be and how it was going to come about. And that took tremendous, tremendous faith. Because, Jochebed had no reason to think that anything good was going to happen. She was not given any sort of message from God or anything that this was what she should do. We read about that sometimes. These people are given a message from God, your child is going to be a special child, and they do this and that. Jochebed did not get any of that. She was not told that her child was going to be anything special. And she had no reason to think Moses was going to be found. And if Moses was found, she had no reason to think that he would be saved. Obviously, no Hebrew could have taken him in even if they had wanted to do so. And there was no reason to think that any Egyptian was going to care in the least about this Hebrew baby. Jochebed had no reason to think that anything that she did was going to make the slightest difference at all. And yet she did it anyway. She did it, and she trusted that somehow, in some way, God was going to make something good happen. She had faith that somehow, in some way, God was going to save her son. And God did. Pharaoh's daughter, of all people, goes down to the river and finds the baby Moses. She feels sorry for this little 3-month-old Hebrew baby. And that's amazing in and of itself when you think about it. It was her father, the Pharaoh, who had ordered the Hebrew baby boys to be killed. And yet God uses the Pharaoh's daughter, of all people, to save Moses. Such an incredible thing. But again, Jochebed's faith makes the difference, because when Pharaoh's daughter finds this baby and feels sorry for it, there's Miriam, Jochebed's daughter, who Jochebed had planted right there. Miriam goes up to her and says, "Hey, I have an idea. Why don't I get one of the Hebrew women to nurse this baby for you?" And Pharaoh's daughter agrees, and of course Miriam takes Moses right back to his mom, and Jochebed gets to raise the baby Moses for the first years of his life. And not only that, she gets paid for it. We're going to talk next week about some of the things Moses did after he grew up, but today I want to keep the focus on his mother, on Jochebed. Because the more I think about it, the more incredible her faith seems to me. Because, Jochebed was in a completely hopeless situation. There was no way that she could possibly win. No matter what she did, no matter what way she turned, there was no way that things were going to turn out well. She obviously did not consider killing her child to be an option. But keeping him was not an option either. And there was nobody that she could give him to. What other option was there? Abandon him? Just hope that someone would find him and raise him? What were the odds of that? Jochebed had absolutely no good options whatsoever. She did not even have any mediocre options. Every one of the options she had led to her son dying one way or another. And I don't doubt that everybody around her probably told her that. Everybody who knew what was going on. As she was hiding Moses, as she was making this basket for him, as she was taking the basket to the river, I don't doubt that everybody who knew what was going on was telling her, "Come on, Jochebed, be reasonable. This is never going to work. You've got to face the facts. You cannot keep denying reality. Sure, the reality stinks, but you've got no choice but to accept it. You've got to listen to reason. You're a Hebrew woman who's given birth to a baby boy. One way or another, your son is going to die. That's just the way it is." And Jochebed refused to accept any of that. She refused to face facts. She refused to listen to reason. Instead, Jochebed listened to faith. And faith, her faith in God, was stronger than reason. Against all the odds, Jochebed's plan worked. Again, not only was Moses saved, but Jochebed was able to raise him during the early years of his life. Now, I don't suppose that any of us have been in the exact position that Jochebed was, but I'm sure that some of us have been in a situation where it seemed like there were just no good options. We've been in situations where it seemed like no matter what we did, things were not going to turn out well. Maybe you're in one of those situations now. When we are in those situations, it seems like there's always somebody there, right, to tell us, look, you don't have a chance. Be reasonable. Face the facts. Don't deny reality. Accept the situation. Listen to reason. You might as well give up. It's just the way it is. Now, I'm not going to tell you that every time we're in a tough spot, God's going to give us a golden ticket to get out of it. You know better than that. You know life does not work that way. But what I am telling you is not to put limits on what God can do. Because God is all-powerful. God can do anything that God chooses to do. And God has plans and purposes that we know nothing about and that we never will know anything about, at least as long as we're on this earth. And sometimes things do happen that defy the odds. Things happen that nobody saw coming. Things happen that nobody can explain. Diseases go into spontaneous remission. Buildings collapse and nobody's killed. A tornado is headed right for a town and instead it goes back up into the clouds. Now those things don't happen all the time. They don't even happen a majority of the time, but they do happen sometimes. And so the next time you're in a situation where it looks like no matter what you do, you cannot win, think about Jochebed. And consider whether this time it might be better not to listen to reason. Consider whether this time it might be better to do what Jochebed did. Consider whether this time, instead of listening to reason, you should listen to faith. Amen.